It's a couple of days after Christmas, and your 7-year-old daughter is complaining about having headaches. You give her some ibuprofen, but it doesn't really do the trick. And one day when you're out with your son running errands, you get a frantic call from your wife that changes your family's life forever. This is Hope Stories. Welcome to Hope Stories. I'm your host, Mitch Kaloris. Today I'm joined by Glenn Counts, the father of Evie Counts. Welcome to Hope Stories.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So your daughter, Evie, had something happen when she was 7 years old. Tell us about what happened.
So she was out playing soccer with my dad. I was with my son at another appointment. And she basically told him that she kind of had a headache, and they stopped playing soccer and came into the house, and she, told my wife she had a headache, but I mean, much to my wife's credit, she could tell right away that there was something a little different about her. She was really flushed and started just acting really strange, and eventually just lost consciousness. I think her eyes rolled in the back of her head, and my wife called 911 immediately.
Wow.
And talked to the dispatcher there, and they started kind of going through what was going on.
What time of year was this?
So this was December 27th, so 2 days after Christmas.
Of 2023?
2023, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's 7 years old, just playing perfectly normal, healthy girl, as far as we knew. And the dispatcher, talked to her throughout all this, what's going on. And there was an ambulance I dispatched. And then my mother-in-law called me from the appointment. I was only a few minutes away, and basically said, you need to get home. There's something wrong with Evie. And so I grabbed my son and jumped in the car. I had no idea what was going on. And we, made our way home. And we actually passed the ambulance on the way to our house. It had gone into a different neighborhood.
Oh, wow.
And, my son actually was like, because I didn't know anything. All I knew was that there was an emergency. She said something about 911. And then, we came in and pulled into the house. My mother-in-law was out in the street looking for the ambulance. And she said, there's something wrong with Evie. And I just said, did they call an ambulance? And she said, yes. And I immediately spun around and went to find the ambulance. And it was actually in another neighborhood. Grabbed the ambulance and, got him through the gate, got him to the house. And when we pulled into the drive, they had actually carried her out to the front yard. My neighbor was nearby too, so he came over to help. And that's when she started seizing right there in the yard. So I jumped out of the car. Could tell she was seizing, but she was breathing, everything. And that luckily the paramedics were right there too. So they immediately kind of came, grabbed her and took her into the ambulance. And then I joined, they gave her some medicine to help with the seizures, and, started asking questions and stuff. And then we just made our way to Summerlin Hospital. And that's, so I rode in the ambulance. We got to the hospital, and they brought her into the, to the ER, the trauma room there. My wife was, right behind, getting a ride from a neighbor in the car. And then we, both were in there and just watching her have seizures and just not knowing anything, what was going on.
So she'd never had anything like this happen to her before, like seizures or things like that?
No.
Just completely out of the blue?
Completely out of the blue. Yeah, so no idea like what this could have been or anything.
So they're doing triage basically to try to figure out what's going on?
Right, exactly. They basically just started giving her medicines to just help with the seizures, because that was the main thing that was going on right now.
Yep.
So they gave her some anti-seizure medicine.
Really not sure what's happening or what's causing them, just want to calm it down, right?
Exactly. Just asking questions, have you ever seen this? Anything like that. And no, we didn't know anything. So so they gave her enough medicine, she stopped seizing, and then they gave her a CAT scan, and that's when we found out that she had a mass in her head.
So it was diagnosed as a benign brain tumor, is that correct?
So not yet. I mean, right at this point, it's a CAT scan. They
Sure.
could just see just a big blob. It's about the size of a baseball in her head. You know, you can imagine just her tiny head and then the size of a baseball in there. So.
You didn't have any physical, physical attributes that you caught in advance? Could you see a lump or anything like that?
No,
or was it
no.
inside
This is
her
all
skull?
internal.
Gotcha. Wow.
And so, yeah, they just, said she had a mass and that, obviously she's got an immense amount of pressure going on in her head. That's what's causing the seizures.
Mm-hmm.
Later we found out that basically the tumor had a really large cyst attached to it, and that cyst like hemorrhaged, and then basically the hemorrhage with the blood just caused the event that basically caused all the pressure in her brain to make her go unconscious and all the seizures. And so they basically said we have to act fast. We need to get her over to Sunrise Hospital to relieve the pressure. And so they called Life Flight. There wasn't a helicopter available, but they did eventually get her into an ambulance, and then we got her over to Sunrise Hospital and met the surgical team there. So it all started at about 4 o'clock, and at 8 o'clock she went into surgery with Dr. Bragg over there at Sunrise Hospital. And after about 2 to 2.5 hours, she came out and told us that, they got her stable. So.
What goes through your mind when something like this happens?
A lot of things. You have no idea what's going on, right? Like, I'm not a doctor. For me, I think my main thing was that I just wanted to stay calm and just provide just a peace and healing atmosphere for her. My wife was obviously right there, very concerned, very emotional, and so I also just needed to kind of have that calm for her as well. But silently in your mind, you're just thinking like, what's going to happen? Is she going to make it? Is she going to be okay, even if she does make it? The brain is the biggest part of your body. Without it, there's nothing. So, we just had no idea. So for me, it was just mostly staying positive and just providing as much peace and healing energy that I could, to that atmosphere and to her.
How was your family taking this at the time? So of course you just described what was happening with you and your wife, but she has siblings as well, right?
She did. She does. She's got an older brother and a younger brother. So the youngest was 3, probably didn't really know what's going on. My oldest is very inquisitive, so obviously very concerned. But we've luckily have a lot of family support here in Vegas. Both my parents and my wife's parents are here in Vegas, so they immediately were able to just kind of take care of that challenge of our lives, at least. So they, my parents were taking care of the kids, and then my wife's mother is a nurse, a retired nurse, so she came to the hospital and obviously wanted to be as whatever help she could. And so they, again, we didn't really know anything, so the information that we could provide wasn't much, until we actually had more information. But
so she had the surgery, went for 2.5 hours or so. She comes out of it.
She comes out of it, and all we know is that she's stable, and that's the best news that we could hope for at that point, right? The main challenge that she was facing was obviously the pressures in her head, and so by removing part of her skull and then adding a drain into her brain, that was able to relieve a lot of the pressures, and then her body could start to heal, calm down, start to recover. But obviously they kept her sedated, and so we didn't really know what to expect on the other side, other than she was stable, and just start making a plan as far as what's going to happen next.
And during this time, did they intubate her, or how did this, what was the next kind of step in the progression here?
So they intubated her in Summerlin Hospital.
Okay.
I think once they got the first CAT scan and they found the mass, I think they just knew this was going to be something bigger.
Yeah.
So they went ahead and intubated her then.
Okay.
And then so yeah, she was intubated basically for 9 days after that.
Wow.
And so, meeting with Dr. Bragg, the surgeon that took, removed her skull, or part of her skull, that she basically didn't have the tools in the OR. She didn't have the OR to do the surgery that Evie needed to debulk the tumor safely. And so she, made the plan that we were going to transfer up to Salt Lake, where she's kind of based, and her partner was up there, ready to go for the debulking tumor. So so then we finally had a plan. So we found out that the next day they did a true MRI, and that's when we found out she actually had a tumor. We didn't really know anything until that first real MRI the next day, and we could see the image of like the actual tumor, and then the cyst that had grown all around it, and just how big it was, about 8 centimeters.
And leading up to this, she showed no outward symptoms or signs. Everything was fine. Playing normal kid at 7
normal
years
kid.
old.
Yeah, I mean, she's always kind of
Just went through Christmas.
a little emotional. Like that was kind of her personality as far as we knew. Is it possible that was the tumor affected that somehow? It's possible, but we had no idea. Yeah.
So they flew her to Salt Lake, and so this is all occurring the week between Christmas and New Year's, correct?
Yeah. So now we're on December 28th. We're finding out that she's got a tumor, and December 29th, I'm boarding a plane with her to go up to Salt Lake City to transfer her up there. And then it was just a matter of like when the surgery is going to take place. And so for whatever reason, just scheduling and everything, it was the 31st is when the debulking surgery, happened. And so that was 8 a.m, and it was over a 10-hour surgery throughout that entire Sunday, the 31st. Yeah.
It was just you and her? Was your wife with you on this trip?
So I took the plane up with her, and then my wife was on a commercial plane with her mom, shortly after that.
Sure.
And so we were real fortunate. They took amazing care of us just at Sunrise, and then definitely in Salt Lake City as well. But we had a place to stay with the Ronald McDonald House. It was amazing. They just said, you guys are taken care of for as long as you need. And so they were able to kind of get that organized a little bit while I was kind of still there in the ICU with her. And then, throughout, we kind of like took turns more or less, staying with her and all that kind of.
How long were you in Salt Lake during this whole time, from the time you arrived to the time you were able to come back to Vegas?
She was in the hospital for 40 days. And so we were there through February, and then, late February, we came back to Vegas. We stayed for another about 10 days in Salt Lake after her first chemo, just to make sure that that everything, went well, and everything from there.
So after the debulking surgery, which was on New Year's Eve,
right?
What did the doctors tell you after the surgery?
So it was a really challenging surgery. Basically, where the tumor is, they basically were able to debulk a lot of the cyst, which was a lot of the size as well of what was in her head. So they were able to take out a lot of the size from that, and then they were trying to get into the tumor, but she kept bleeding a lot when they were trying to get into the tumor. So they eventually just had to stop, is basically where they got. And so at that point, they were just talking about, what should we do next? Should we go back in and get more of the tumor, or should we just wait and see. But the plan, I think, at the time was that they were going to go back in. But the tumor board met a couple days later. They meet every Tuesday, and they recommended that we just wait and see kind of at this point. I think they took a biopsy while they were in there to get kind of an idea of what the tumor was. And I don't think it was official, but they basically were leaning towards it being, a type 1 benign tumor. And so I think that probably led a lot to their decision on it's going to be okay if we just leave it in there. So, so then it was just kind of a little bit of just waiting to wake her up. So I think it was on the 5th is when we finally got to see her again. We were just waiting for her blood pressures to come down and the intracranial pressure to make sure that it was stable before they made the decision to wake her up. And that was an incredible moment as well. She was talking right away. She was just wondering where her grandfather was. And so that was, a miracle that she was still in there that whole time. And so they got her over to kind of a recovery room, ICU, and they put her on a lot of like pain medications and stuff, just to make sure that she wasn't going to be in any pain. And so she was awake, but she wasn't talking. And so that was kind of a really hard couple days, for sure, because you could see her in there, but she couldn't, communicate really.
When she could communicate, or was she obviously had no idea what just happened to her, or how long it was. It just, one day I'm okay, and the next day I wake up in a hospital, pretty much.
Pretty much, but it still took a while before we really got to communicate with her. So they basically slowly weaned her off the pain medication, and so it was probably a pretty high dose, and so she was basically just kind of in a drug stupor,
Sure.
more or less, for a couple days.
Yeah.
And then so then she's, we're just hanging out in the room. She started to kind of like a lot more eye movement, a lot more, contact. You could talk to her and you could kind of just see her understanding.
Being more responsive.
Yeah.
Yeah, aware.
And so watched a lot of Bluey in the hospital. So we were watching Bluey, and she started to chuckle, started to laugh. So that was cool. And then I asked her, they were talking about pumpkin seeds, and I asked her, "Hey, you like pumpkin seeds, right?"
Pumpkin seeds?
I love them.
And she
Do you
said,
love them?
"Yeah,
Yummy.
I
They
love
are
pumpkin
yummy, aren't they?
So
You and Jack.
that was like
Jack
the
likes
first thing
pumpkin
that
seeds
she
too.
really said after that first
Right.
couple, moments of after waking her up. And so just bit by bit, she just started coming back.
How did you and your wife handle this ordeal? Coming completely out of left field, just crashing into your lives out of nowhere. How did you guys handle this whole situation? Being, up in Salt Lake, first here in Vegas, then up in Salt Lake City. How did you deal with this chaotic situation?
I mean, we were truly blessed by how much support we had from everyone. Like I said, our families just stepped up right away and just made sure that our kids were taken care of, and then we just had an extremely an amazing outreach from our community as well, our school and church community. The kids go to Faith Lutheran Academy, and they just unbelievable. People stepped up with, meals and, donations and all kinds of just incredible support. You just wouldn't, I can't even do it justice. It's like how much people just showed their love for Evie and for us. And so my wife and I were there, and and then basically we just kind of knew everything was taken care of back home. Talked to the kids as much as we could on FaceTime and everything. Like I said, my son's very, inquisitive, so he wanted to be with us, of course. But, it just doesn't really make any sense. There's nothing he could really do there. So we just,
Sure.
kept him at home, they stayed with my parents and just kept getting them to school and everything. And then my wife and I just, taking turns, making sure that somebody's there with her all the time. I'm used to some crazy sleep situations and being on crazy clock hours and whatnot. So I always took the night shift. I was always there with her every night. And then my wife and her mom would come and kind of take over for a couple hours for me to go back home, get a nap, get cleaned up and everything like that. And then our life was in the hospital, for 40 days. So.
Wow. So when she came back to Vegas, this is in February now, right? Where did the journey go from there?
So her first chemo we did in Salt Lake at the hospital while she was still in the recovery room. And then we stayed a couple days, 10 days for her to go through some like PT and OT. And then, we got back to a huge welcome back party, right in front of our house and everything. And then she started her chemo journey, which here at Cure for the Kids, which was in March. Early March. And then
2024.
So this was 2024. Yeah. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Early March 2024. And, fortunately for her, the tumor was benign, so we didn't have to do some of the chemos that I got to witness during my time here, as far as like multiple days a week and all that stuff. Hers was once a month, and it was it was like not necessarily an all day thing, but it was we were in here for 5-6 hours. Mm-hmm. And so she was doing carboplatin and vincristine, those two, which talked into Dr. Whipple up in Salt Lake and Dr. Gupta. They knew that this had a real high rate of success against these types of tumors. And in the beginning, she handled it just like a champ. It was the first time in Salt Lake, it was like almost a non-event. But they told us that that's kind of how it works. As it goes along, it gets harder. And so it did. It was, the second, her second chemo, the first one here went really well, as far as her tolerances and everything goes, but it did seem to just get harder every time. And then, so she would come in for the chemo, and then it would be 2 blood draws, and then she would get like a week off, and then the chemo again. So we were here at least three times a month, if not more, for just random stuff. I think she was still doing MRIs every 3 months, I think, then. And I'll tell you, the port access, it never got easier for a whole year. The port is just it's just a challenge. It's scary.
It could be a lot of anxiety.
There's a lot, and it is, and it's mostly anxiety, especially for her.
Yep.
Because you do the proper steps. You put the cream on, and you told it does, it shouldn't hurt, right? But it sometimes you could tell she's in pain. Sometimes she would just say, "Oh, that's it," But the anxiety every time was that was a struggle.
Yeah.
For sure. And then she had to take this awful medicine, this awful pink antibiotic, because of the chemo. There's a risk for a certain type of pneumonia, so she had to take this, horrible pink medicine And that was almost the worst part of the whole thing, was trying to get her to take this medicine. And I tried it, and it is the worst stuff you could imagine. It's just gross. So
She's going into the summer now, right? I mean, you're getting into May, June, July in the summertime now, and so school's out. But how did that part of it go for Evie? Obviously she can't go to school. So
she did, if you can believe it. We got her back to school the end of that year, that school year. So the end of first grade. She had recovered so much, it's a miracle. But she was able to do, everything that she needed to do. I mean, she still had struggles at that point, at least, with, her dexterity, like the writing. It took a little while for her to get her, steps back and her walking and everything like that. But, by April, she was, safe to go back to school, and she was, with limitations, she was able to get back in the classroom. Obviously there were accommodations made, but I thought it was really important to get her back into the classroom and to get her back to normalcy as quickly as possible. So that's what we did. We obviously she didn't have much hair, so she wore a lot of bands and whatnot, and but she just was happy to be back in school. And then the summer was just a lot of still dealing with the chemo, trying to keep her active. We still did a lot of PT. I think we kind of phased out the OT because she was recovering so well, but she still needed the PT to kind of get that motion back.
Did she also do that PT here at Cure for the Kids, or?
I don't think that they had the PT
that time
up and running yet. I'm pretty sure. So no, she was doing PT. We found a couple locations in the valley. Tried a couple, and then
a lot of people don't realize kind of the effects of chemo and kind of all of the things that it can affect. One is mobility and things like that. So you literally have to go relearn these skills.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's in addition to the trauma of their brain, but the chemo, it does affect her. And we were always on the watch out for certain things, certain risks with the chemo too. There's this foot drop thing you got to be aware of, and it can affect her legs and everything. So I think that's another good part about the PT and everything as we're going through. And she did great. We didn't really ever see any of that stuff. We lucked out.
How long was she in chemo? How long did her chemo treatment last through? What?
So almost exactly, 1 year basically. So on December 27th, 2024, exactly 1 year after the event was her last chemo session. So.
And I'm guessing she was pretty happy about that.
Oh yeah, I think we were all really, really happy about that. She, just like I said, that the port access stuff, and just finally being able to, put that behind her and just recover, let her body recover from just that, those chemicals and stuff. It was just, a very happy occasion. And then, just started doing exactly that. You could just kind of see her get more weight back, just kind of get her little body back. Her hair started getting, just more natural, thicker. And then, a couple months later, we went up to Salt Lake to get the port removed. I think that was in March 25. And so then it's just been, now it's just IVs. We gotta deal with IVs, right? That's the anxiety for the MRIs and the blood draws and that kind of stuff. Which
of course.
She's a pro.
So what kind of kid is she? What does she like to do? What's her kind of demeanor? Kind of tell us a little bit about her.
She's I would describe her as shy, at first. She's very kind of quiet and reserved, to people she doesn't know and that kind of thing. She's very, wants to stay close to her family. But she's kind of grown out of that a little bit. When she's around friends, she's just a, happy-go-lucky kid. She's starting.
Now she's 9, right?
She's 9 and just perfectly healthy little 9-year-old girl. So she is not limited on the playground or anything like that. I mean, for a while that we were kind of like, let's not have her be doing any ball sports or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But now it's, the limitations are off. We're trying to get her to learn how to ride a bike. She likes to, play Minecraft on her iPad. She's, plays with her brother. She loves her little brother. She
likes Bluey, right?
She likes Bluey, which is, phased out for a while, but she's back into Bluey every once in a while, she's got her little shows that she likes. She loves going to Claire's, and yeah, she got her ears pierced recently, so now that's something that she can shop for, all the new earrings and everything. So her brother plays hockey, so she would go out and play street hockey with her brother, and so
wow.
I know, right?
Wow.
She's like, I want to play hockey, and so I'm like, okay, hey, let's do it, right? So, but
take it easy.
I know, right? But she's got roller skates for Christmas, and so she has been out on those, and she got on the ice a little bit, so she likes to ice skate, and so we'll see.
She's active.
She's active, yeah. She's doing great.
So she had her last chemotherapy basically a year after this all went down. And tell us about, she went and rang the no more chemo bell, right?
Yeah.
No more. Tell us about that whole event.
What a cool experience, and just credit to Cure for the Kids and everybody that works here that has just made this experience as as positive as possible, but especially the celebration with when you're done like that. So that was just really cool. A huge family, everybody gathered. A lot of the doctors got to be there. Dr. Gupta and Lasky and yeah, she I think she didn't really know the drill. She just walked up and started ringing, and they're like, no, hold on. We've got, it's a little ceremony that we like to do first, right. And like read the poem. And
she was kind of quick on the draw.
She was quick on the draw. She was ready to, ring that bell. She'd been seeing that bell for a year now,
I can only imagine.
Right?
It's like, I'm going to ring that bell one day.
I'm going to ring that bell someday, and
Darn right.
And so I think I think that's a cool thing to see every time you come in, because it's like the end goal, right?
What went through your mind when she rang that bell?
Just what a journey, and just again, what a miracle that we're here, and that she's who she is, and that she gets to just slowly put this behind her and grow from that, and just she'll always have the toughest thing that anybody can imagine. She'll have
absolutely
the scars to prove it. So yeah.
Does she ever talk about it with you?
She, not as much anymore, but there were a lot of questions that first year, just like, why did this happen to me? And she there was a lot of like, why I wish I never had a brain tumor. She would say that straight up. And it's sad because there's no answer, right? You just don't know. I just usually tell her that maybe someday we'll find out, but for now, this is our life, and we just have to keep going on.
For people who have not been able to, people who have not experienced something like this, or about to experience this with their child, what advice would you give them now that you can kind of put this in your rearview mirror, and what kind of advice can you tell somebody who's about to go through something like this?
I'd say that it's okay that it's not going to be easy. As the parent, you have to be strong for your kid, because you don't have a choice. You can't expect them to be strong, so you have to. That you just have faith that it's gonna work. That there is a higher power that you have to put faith in, and that whatever the plan is, just make sure you're doing your part of the plan, which is just to be there for your kid and your spouse and your family, and just make sure that you're doing everything you can to make it as easy on them. It's never going to be easy, but if there's anything that you can do, then you just try. And that's really the advice. You can't, you just got to try.
That's great advice. Thank you. That's it for this edition of Hope Stories. I'm Mitch Kaloris. Please like, subscribe, click the notification bell to get more inspirational stories like the one about Evie. Thank you.